At the tone, please record your message. When you have finished recording, you may hang up or press 1 for more options.
Hey, Steven, I have a question. I'm at dinner, and I said to my friend that they should probably pay me for sex, and then that brought up a question. I was like, do I get tipped as well, or do hookers not get tipped because payment includes the tip because, you know, they're hookers. Do you tip a hooker, Steven? That's the question I'm trying to get at. Do you tip a hooker?
I really think that was a valid question, Steven.
Oh, my God.
I was at dinner, like I said, and my friend was across the way, and I just,
How did
I had this
discussion
idea.
come up, though?
Well, it just, you know how my brain works. Things just happen.
Hey, how's
You know,
your dinner
just
tonight? Hey, do you tip hookers?
Right. I think we were probably talking about the tip to leave, and then
you're like,
I was like,
just the tip.
no, I
Hookers.
was like, you should probably. I'm like, should people pay me for sex? And then I was like, wait,
Oh my
do
God.
you tip hookers? Because I don't think you should really tip a hooker, male or female, or other trans, if there's other types of hookers. I don't think that you should be tipping, though. Isn't the tip the money that you're paying them?
I mean, I think of another tip, but
Well, that would be just the tip, but you're supposed to give the whole thing.
I don't know. That's a good question. I mean, if it's a high-end escort, I would assume you probably tip well. But if it's someone on the on Kensington Ave, I don't think you're tipping.
I think it's uniform. Are they adding a 3% back of house service charge too?
How many teeth do they have?
Well, the fewer the better, right?
Oh,
My mom always said, don't ever pay for it. So I think I'll live by that rule. Don't ever pay for it.
Yes.
Which is
I
a
have
pretty
never
good
paid
rule.
and I never will.
Right. Well, right. There's that. But I don't think it should be paid. Though this one time I went out with this girl, right? And we went out multiple times. First time I paid for it. Fine. Right. You're like, there's this thing.
Wait, what do you mean you paid for it?
I paid for, dinner.
Okay. I was like, wait, for sex?
Sorry, Steven. I should reiterate that I paid for
You got to be
dinner.
a little specific on this one, yeah.
My bad. Paid for dinner. I paid for dinner. She didn't even offer, like, to at least split or whatever. I think the offer is what matters.
I agree.
Second time, she made no attempt to offer. So I didn't say anything. Third time, I let the check sit there.
Ooh.
For like 10 minutes.
Oh.
Right?
So
10
awkward.
No, but there's a point. And so I finally pay for it, but I say to her, I'm like, can I ask you a question? I got nothing. I'm not worried about, like, her answer, like, upsetting her, because I'm like, is there any reason why? And I'm just asking this because we've gone out to dinner 3 times now, and 3 times I've paid for it, and 3 times you haven't even looked at the check once or looked at me and said, could I split it? Could I help? Could I leave the tip? Could I do anything? Is there a reason? And she goes, well, my parents always told me that the guy pays and the woman repays him with the pleasure of her company. And I said, so you're basically a hooker. I said, is that what you're telling me?
I was going to say,
that
the pleasure of her company, define that.
Right. Like, I pay for dinner and you fuck me? Is that it? Is that what you're getting at?
I assume she meant pleasure of her company by sitting next to her and having a nice, lovely dinner and discussion.
Right. And I said, what year are we in? I said, at what point do women have rights, and women, you can't have it both ways. You can't say that you want equality, but you want the man to always take care of you in certain situations.
Yeah, I mean, even me, when we go out to like a business lunch or a business dinner, and I know like it's strictly business, only talking about work, typically your employer pays for that. And I still usually try and offer, unless you beat me to the punch and immediately offer your card. I know you're going to pay for it regardless, but I still think it's a nice gesture to be like, hey, let me get some of this, or let me pay for it, or let me put up my half, whatever it may be. Now, other people we go out to lunch with just immediately assume you should pay for it. No names being mentioned.
Yeah, that's lovely. But
when they would just slide the check over right to you.
Yep, you'll take care of this.
You got this.
Yeah, thanks. So that obviously it didn't work with that girl, because I just don't like that mentality. What do you mean that you repay me with the pleasure of your company? I'm not buying the pleasure of your company. You should either enjoy being with me or don't enjoy being with me. You should at least offer. At the very minimum, offer. I know this is a big contention in dating, is what do you do the first time? And I think, honestly, if it goes really, really well and everything is going well, I have no problem paying for it. But if it's just
it's not going to work out,
horrible.
Yeah.
But sometimes, even if it is absolutely horrible, you just pay for it and you get the fuck out of there. And you're like, thanks, it was great, bye. And that's your way out. But I just want, all I'm asking for is someone to just at the very minimum to
offer.
Say, hey, could I split it? I'd be like, no, you know what? You could get the next one.
Every date I've went on, I've always paid for it, but it is nice for them to actually offer. That's when you're like, oh, this could be a keeper.
And how'd that work out for you?
She's now my wife.
Did she pay with Disney bucks?
No Disney bucks.
Do they still have physical Disney dollars?
I have no idea. I don't think so. Everything's in the app.
Because I have Disney dollars still. There were these awesome printed dollar, special Disney money. It was awesome. It was like art. It was pretty amazing. It was Disney dollars, and they were used at Disney. Anyway, that's beside the point. We've got quite a bit to talk about. The hooker was just one of them, which there was no hooker. It was my friend. It was a very important topic. If you think that you should tip the hooker, please text us. I mean, you should text us anyway, 313-710-9729. That's 313-710-9729.
If you have hands-on experience with a hooker, please let us know.
Yeah, because I don't think you tip them, even if they're high-end, unless they have that security guard outside. Even you just pay them. There's a price.
Do you tip the security guard too? Does he beat you up if you don't?
Screw them.
I don't know how this works.
I don't know. Anyway, the reason I'm giving the number so early now is Steven will be going on vacation in a couple of weeks.
Yes.
And we still want to have an episode. And so we are going to do one of those Q&A episodes. We'll still talk the normal way that we do, which is like this. But we will do a Q&A episode where we're going to ask on the text line for questions to come in. That's 313-710-9729. That's one of the places. Not sure if I'll do it on Facebook or not, but the primary place where we're going to be looking for good questions. Really good questions. We're not talking about what settings should I use and what should I buy. Let's hear some of the hard-hitting good questions, and you ask those, and we might put them up. Can people send voice messages back on Community?
I don't know. That's a good question.
I think they can. You can try to send a voice message. I love voice messages.
Where do you check the voice messages, though?
I don't know if it's an attachment. Or you could email the, let's say, support@fronosphoto.com. You could email an audio question. I love audio questions.
They can send pictures, so they can probably send MP3s, I assume, like a voice memo.
You can try to send an audio recording back. We'll see if we can do it. We could probably test it right now, but I'm not going to do that. So that's going to be in a couple weeks. We have an episode next week that we'll be doing, obviously, the same way we normally do, and then we're going to record another one, which is the Q&A, so you guys can be a part of that. Big news, Steven. We've got lots of big news, starting with I did my 101-mile ride.
Such big news.
It is big news.
Breaking news.
5 hours, 59 minutes, and 6 seconds of ride time.
Congrats.
Thank you. It was very, very...
And you hit your goal too, right? Donation-wise?
Money?
Yeah.
Well, for whatever reason, when I started the $2,500 campaign, it ended early.
Oh.
So I thought it would just stay up. Why would it end, right? Mm-hmm. And so that one had about $1,400 or $1,500 in. So I started another one with $1,500 goal, and that one hit $1,506 or something.
That's
so
the day
I
of,
think we got
it finally
over 3,000. Yeah, someone put in to make it.
Oh,
hit
that's
the goal.
great.
Someone put in that amount.
I threw you a couple bucks at the end.
Thank you, Stephen.
Not
I appreciate everybody.
12%.
It was more than $12.50, but I appreciate everybody that contributed. It was one of the reasons I finished the damn ride because we zoomed through the first 50 pretty well at a pretty high clip. Mm-hmm. I finished at 17 miles an hour average for those 5 hours and 59 minutes of ride time. I will say that the last half was more difficult. At 72 miles or 73 miles at the rest stop, I did not feel very good. My legs and body were fine, so the legs were great. The legs were great almost all the way through. It came down to like energy. It started to get hot. I had all the I drank my drinks. I ate my stuff, but I think the sweetness of those things combined in the stomach started to make me not feel great.
The air quality was back to normal then, right? You were kind of nervous that they were going to cancel the ride because of the wildfires?
Well, they were going to keep an eye on it, but the air quality was fine.
Okay.
But I kept going because I knew I had to keep moving, but I really didn't want to eat more or put more of the sweet stuff in me. So in the future, I got to get better. I want stuff that doesn't have flavor. I just want to drink electrolytes, don't have flavor. I don't need the flavor to drink it.
Fuel the machine.
And that's fine. At 82 miles, I got a double cramp right above the knee.
Ooh.
The leg got stuck straight out. So I had to pop it out of my clip on the bike, pop the right one out of the clip on the bike, came to a stop on the shoulder. I wasn't going too fast, and it just had to stand straight up. I would bend my right leg, and then it would stop cramping. Then the left was cramped, so I had to bend my left leg, and it just went on for a while, so I started pounding on them a little bit. I was able to work it out.
How quick can you pop out of the bike?
Instantly. I mean, really quick.
Okay.
You just have to shimmy it.
I couldn't imagine
to a pretty
being
low.
locked in, and then you get a giant cramp, and you just can't really, get off your pedals.
Yeah, that would hurt. You just have to jiggle it out.
Okay.
So I have it set to one of the lowest settings, so it's not super tight,
So it's
which means
easy.
it has more wiggle room.
Sure.
So if you do end up falling, there's a good possibility they will automatically pop out with just some motion.
Okay.
So I at 82, that was very difficult. I put some Nun Tab in. I drank some of the electrolytes. I had salt pills throughout the ride that helped. And it just the last 10 miles were very difficult. I popped another gel, didn't want to do it, felt like shit as soon as I took it, which wasn't great, but I knew I had to keep going, and I just pedaled through. And when I got to the end and stopped, I felt much better.
How was it getting home from Atlantic City? Because that was the day that 95 collapsed, right?
It was the day 95 collapsed. There was no issue getting home from Atlantic City because where I'm going on 95, it's not bad.
Well, I know that was the first day, though. I didn't know how much of 95 they closed off in the beginning.
Yeah, they didn't close down to me because you go off over one of the bridges by the stadiums or the Ben Franklin Bridge, which is what we rode over.
Yeah.
And no, that wasn't. It's not closed. It's closed off from like Allegheny.
It's an exit or two after your exit.
Holy shit!
Yeah,
that's like one or two exits.
It's right after.
Holy shit!
It's right. Yeah, that's why, like I said yesterday when I came into work, that specific exit that I get off for work, it was all the way backed up because that is pretty much the last exit before you get stopped.
Wow. For those who don't know what happened, 6:30 a.m. on Sunday, there was unfortunately a gas tanker, crashed underneath the overpass of 95.
No one still knows the exact story, right? Like did it get stuck? Did it just crash?
No one knows how it crashed yet.
Yeah.
But no one's talked about the driver actually dying, which the driver did die.
Anyone did die until they found remains cleaning it up.
Yeah. So that happened. So what happened is you had a tanker fire underneath I-95, which obviously compromised 95, and then it collapsed on the northbound side, and then the southbound side buckled, so that was undrivable. They had to shut down 95, which is a major thoroughfare running north to south in the country. So a lot of stuff goes through from New York through Philly to DC to Florida, all the way down. And this being closed is a major issue. Now they're working extremely fast to get it repaired. It's going to cause some major traffic delays, and you just got to find new ways. Like me trying to go to Alan's camera, a trip that should take 20 minutes or 23 or 4 minutes, I would have to find a totally different route. It would probably take almost an hour to get there.
And there's not many alternative routes. That's the issue.
No.
So what are you thinking? 3 months, 6 months?
I think a month.
Really? That fast?
I think they've already cleared it, and I think they've already started to lay steel girders.
Wow.
I think they've already done, like if you watch the drone footage every day that people are putting up,
you can already see progress.
It's cleared, and I think they're already starting to put up the
Did the Army Corps of Engineers come down and they're
everybody
working on
did. I mean, there's contingency. There has to be contingencies for this.
It's major. I know people were calling terrorism at first too.
Well, the interesting thing here, they just completed this portion of I-95.
Brand new. Yep.
The added lanes a matter of months ago. It's been under construction for 10, 15 years. It's been under construction since it started construction. Basically, they finished one piece of construction, and then they started another. They widened it from 4 lanes to 5 lanes or 3 lanes to 5 lanes. And anyway, it fell. So no one was killed on the highway, but there is insane video of people driving through the buckled
Southbound
highway
yeah.
to get there. But that's that. So anyway, back to my ride. It felt great to finish. My buddy Richie finished at 18 miles an hour. I was 17 miles an hour. My moving time was probably a lot longer than his because I had to stop a few extra times. And thankfully, the team that I was with sat back with me and went a little slower. If I felt much better, I would have been able to keep up a 15, 16 mile pace in the last 10 miles or so. Actually, I kept up at least a 15 mile per hour pace, even though I didn't feel good.
I mean, at the end, it's not really a race about who's winning or losing. You know, it's more about just charity and doing it for fun.
Yeah. But what I didn't want to have happen is I did not want to be one of those people that had to get in one of those loser cars, because it says loser on it, where you have to put your bike on the back and then you have to get in the car
finish the race.
And they drive you the final way. And then I would have to send out a video or a post being like, guys, I didn't do it.
I'm a loser.
So my motivation was, well, I'm finishing. It never crossed my mind to fucking quit. Even with the cramps happening, I got them to stop. I finished and I posted, I did it. Thank you. Bye. And that was it.
I had faith in you. I knew you'd finish.
Yeah, not easy. So next year, if we do it, we may do the 67, which is just straight down. Because basically what happens
in Philly,
is
you're saying?
all of it starts in Philly at the Ben Franklin Bridge if you're going to do 67 or 100.
Oh, okay.
It's only 67 miles to Atlantic City. So
Straight
you come
through.
up on a
Gotcha.
fork at about 20, at mile 20 or so, or maybe it's 30, you come up on a fork. If you go left, it tails back for 20 miles and around. If you go right, it just goes to the completion. So we had to do the loop of 20 miles back, which brings you back to the same fork, and now you have 30 miles to finish at the very end after doing the extra 20. So next year we may just try to like motor through the 67.
Gotcha.
We'll see what happens. But the other breaking news, Steven, which I really wanted to send you a voicemail on, which I didn't because the hooker voicemail came through and I like that voicemail, was I am the pole smoker. I am the reason the pole got smoked and is gone.
Victory!
That's what I yelled during the video. Quick recap. People don't know this. If you don't know this and you haven't been following the saga on Instagram or here, there was a pole blocking the sidewalk for no particular reason. It had no reason to be there. It's not holding up anything other than blocking a sidewalk for people to walk down, large people in wheelchairs, people with carriages.
Sure.
It wouldn't, you couldn't do it. So I left a note on the pole last week, and it said, "Dear pole blocking the sidewalk, you're making it impossible for anyone in a wheelchair with a stroller or larger in size," because you always have to add that because equal opportunity, because we'll bring that up later, to safely navigate the sidewalk. There's no reason for you to have been placed in the middle of a sidewalk. Do you expect people to have to go in the middle of the street to get around you? ? This letter is the first request for you to be removed before I choose to remove you. Please remove yourself in the next 24 hours. Signed, Jared Polin, a concerned sidewalk
The pole
walker.
smoker.
The pole smoker.
I wonder if they just mismeasured or something and they put it there by accident when it was supposed to be 2 feet back and they just left it. I don't know. It's weird.
No, I think they just wanted to block off. I think because there's one also on the other side where the detour in the sidewalk starts.
Okay.
But there they have a big ass dumpster and then a place to walk around it in the street, but with partitions up separating you from traffic. And when you get to this pole that's in the middle, the reason it's an issue is because there's one in the middle of the sidewalk, which normally you could walk around, except for there's another pole that's been there for like 50 years. That's a small pole so people can't drive up on the sidewalk.
Yeah.
That's to the left. And to the right is another one of those bullshit poles. So seriously, my ass has a hard time fitting through it straight, so I have to turn sideways. And you couldn't get a wheelchair through it, and you couldn't get a stroller through it. And so I left a note. I was very careful not to threaten because I didn't want someone...
Do you know who I am?
No, I didn't want to make a threat.
I know.
I just...
If you
only
don't do
thing I
this-
said is, this is the first request to be removed before I choose to remove you. So I didn't want to be like, or else, or any of that. I also chose to put my name on there. Many people, when they leave notes, always leave their name off because they want anonymity. I, on the other hand, think that it's very important that you put a name to something, or if you have a problem with something, you put your name and contact information there so that someone can contact you so you can have a further discussion. Don't get accusatory. Don't get threatening. And this is in any situation. Not many people are going to face this poll. Did I need to do this? No. Moral of the story is I come back. Not many people care, right? I come back, I think it was a Monday, and I'm walking from a distance. I'm like, we should go check out the poll. And I was like, I'm like, guys,
Oh my God.
I don't see the pole. I don't see the pole. And I get up near the pole and I'm like, victory.
Did you get on your knees too? The whole victory.
No, but I went down and I gave the finger to what was left of the pole and I was like, fuck you, pole. Fuck you, I win. So they cut it down below, like right at ground level. So I don't know if it was the workers. I don't know if it was something else because I did report it to 311 just because I was like, this is blocking the way. Usually 311 doesn't work in a day. So I think they might have saw my, I used toupee tape, multiple pieces of toupee tape to stick it to the pole.
Surprised you didn't just gaff tape it.
You couldn't because the pole was only 4 inches and the letter was like 7 or 8 inches.
Well, put the tape behind the letter.
I thought it would be smarter to use toupee tape.
Okay. Gaff tape's a little stronger, I think.
That's a toupee tape that we use on our chest.
Yeah.
So that's that, guys. I am the pole smoker. Hashtag, I like being the pole smoker, the one who smokes poles.
I can't believe they actually cut that down.
I didn't think they would cut it down.
I thought the construction workers would probably laugh at that and be like, who's this guy?
No, they would say it in Spanish because the construction workers are all Spanish speaking and working hard. No, they work so freaking hard, it's not even funny. They're just the workers. I'm sure the foreman and the other people might be, a little different. But if I could have a worker, it's going to be the Spanish speaking worker because those guys kick freaking ass, show up early, stay late, get the job done, do it well. They're my favorite people when it comes to working. So that's what I have to say about that.
Yeah. F you, Pole.
Let's jump into a photo news discussion right off the bat. Steven, comparison discussion, right? We put out a comparison between the Nikon Z8, the Sony A7R5, and the Canon R5. What did you want to bring up about this?
I just wanted to bring up the comment section because I feel like this got posted in a Nikon forum or a group of some sort because we just got flocked with all these negative Nikon comments. Like people basically saying like Z8 wins all day. And I'm talking within minutes saying like Z8 won clearly, all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, you guys didn't even watch the video yet. It's been out for 5 or 10 minutes and it's just flooded with Nikon comments. But at the end of the day, I just want to say like these videos, like the check marks don't really matter. And we bring it up in the video. It's more about sharing what each camera actually offers and directly comparing them side by side for you, the viewer, to decide what's best for you and your type of photography. Yeah, we are a little, opinionated in certain things saying like I used it for this and it worked out for me or whatever it may be. But at the end of the day, we're just trying to simply compare them and say what they offer and make up your own mind.
Right. So it's one thing to compare just the specs. But it's another thing, I add the extra ripple of I've used these cameras in the real world.
Yes.
Here's my feelings as a system as a whole. Because you have to take the entire system into consideration when you're making a purchase. If you are deciding to go one direction or the other, you want to know how the system is, right? There's a reason you pick a Sony if you want to have third-party lenses as of right now. Nikon has some third-party lenses. They're kind of first-party. Actually, they do. They have some Tamron, but they also have some rebranded Tamrons that say Nikon on them, which are basically Tamron lenses that Nikon paid them to rebrand with their own stuff. But we know that the Z8 on paper is a solid offering when it comes to all the specs.
We said multiple times that it blows the others out of the water for certain specs, especially video.
Right. Well, and shooting frames per second, the 45 megapixels, that the R5 is a little older at this point. But what some of the commenters don't get is that these camera companies don't release 3K, like Canon, Nikon, and Sony don't line up and release the camera on the same day. So one camera might be 2 years newer than the other, and then 5 months, 6 months later, Canon will come out with a R5 Mark II, which you're going to be like, which still may not have a stacked sensor, right, Steven? Which still may not, but that doesn't mean that the Nikon automatically outshines it.
But speaking of that, it being a little older and we're still comparing it and throwing it on the table because, again, that is the current offering. I remember when we did this with the Z7 II, when the R5 first came out and everyone bitched that like the Z7 II is much older, you can't compare it, it's not fair. Now, on the other hand, we're comparing the Z8, which is brand new, and the R5 is much older, and all these Nikon fanboys are praising, look at how much it blows the others out of the water, the Z8's so much better, and it's like, yeah, because it's much newer, guys, also. But when it wasn't in your favor, when we had the Z7 II on the table, you guys bitched about it, and now it is in your favor, and now it's suddenly okay.
You got some comments, Steven?
I saw a lot of people talking about, we were praising Canon throughout the video, even though it clearly lost, all this kind of stuff. I don't think we did. I rewatched it and I'm like, Nikon, we said it wins most of the time in each direct comparison. We shit on Canon about the record limit, the 30-minute record limit. We freaked out a little bit about that, saying, why can't it just be simply fixed via a firmware update? We shit on their touchscreen and how it's not flush. We went on a whole tangent about that. We threw it off the table almost because it doesn't have third-party support yet. I mean, there was a lot of negative things we also said about Canon. I think we were very fair across the board saying pros and cons for each specific brand. I don't think we favored one over the other, really. Again, if anything, we said Nikon won most of the time when it came to specs, especially on paper.
At least on specs. But when it comes to, now you look at the R5 and you're like, wait a second, it's just dropped to under $3,000, right? To $2,999, which was this
great
week
value,
it dropped.
yeah.
It's $3,000 versus 40. How much is the R8, Z8? I forget
it's
already.
$4,000.
Right, versus $4,000. Now, the R5 is an extremely viable camera. We sit here at my desk. I mean, the cameras that we use to film,
we record the entire video with it, yeah,
are still what we use here. We wouldn't jump ship and switch to the Nikon to do that. We still like the R5s for that. The R5s are extremely viable cameras in the real world, and they have a great lineup of lenses. So it's just like, the whole point of the comparison is to show you what's available, allow you to make your own decision based off of my expertise, based off of using all the cameras, based off of all the specs, and then you can decide what way do you want to go. Because you, as I always say, you have to think about the long term. I come from the mindset of, you know, an amateur, advanced amateur, someone who wants to be a professional.
Yeah.
And that's why a lot of the times, like, the top selling cameras are the R50s and the M50s and the
budget friendly
lower end
cameras, yeah.
Right. But I still think it's important, even, well, actually not as important when you're buying $500, $600, $700 cameras and kits at the time, that you can't jump ship the next time you decide that you want to be a photographer and go further. You can still get rid of that system. You don't have to stick to it. But that's where I come into play with helping you decide where to start if you were looking for your first new camera, or if you're looking to upgrade and go from there.
And I just want to be clear too, it wasn't just Nikon fanboys freaking out in the comment section. I mean, there was also, you know, Canon fanboys saying like, well, the Canon goes to 50 ISO and you said the native ISO of the Nikon 64. It's like, okay, if you want to play that game, one, it's not native, and two, the Z8 technically goes to 32 if you really want to say the Canon goes to 50.
Right,
so
because it goes to -2.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that whole, it doesn't go, whatever.
And a lot of people brought up the firmware update, which we'll get to in a minute, and they were mentioning that like, oh, this is already outdated because the Z8 just got updated. It's like, guys, that's for the Z9. I'm sure eventually it will come to the Z8, but that is specifically for the Nikon Z9 currently. So this video still holds up. It's still current with all of the updated firmware and specs on the screen. And, you know, we also didn't hit on like certain negative things about the Nikon, like it doesn't do dual redundant video recording. We simply glossed over that. We put it on the screen, but we didn't mention it. Stuff like that. Like, we didn't go out of our way to make it a negative bash against the Nikon. And I think people just assume that we're always negative, and I don't think we are. I think, again, this review was really positive towards the Nikon.
Doorbell. Okay, I had to run to the door. I'm back, Steven.
Well, who's that?
Can't tell you what the package is.
Ooh, secret package?
Secret package. Secret package. What could it be? Secret package.
The Nikon Z10?
Steven, don't tell them.
Sorry.
Nikon will be very upset with me. Crap. More so than they already are. Oh, that's another thing. I love when people are like, all you do is shit on Nikon. You need to give that up. And I'm like, well, first off, Nikon comes to me, right? They call and they're like, do you want to do stuff? And because they realize that I'm fair and honest and actually help them, because if the stuff is good, it looks good, right? And put it out into the world. Speaking of that, Z9 gets a firmware update called 4.0.
4.0, wow.
See, that's what I slammed. So it was in Photo News Fix. I slammed the fact that after less than 2 years, they are calling it 4.0. I can see the major update, the first one, going to 2.0 when they released all that raw video and internal this and internal that going to 2.0. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But every other update after that, and even 3.0 should have been 2.12, 2.15, 2.2, right? 2.3. Go into that direction, not go right from 3.13 or 3.14 and jump right to 4 with this update that I still don't think is that big of a deal.
I mean, the difference is they're not just doing simple bug fixes, you know, they're actually adding new features, which does kind of call for a fairly big update number. But I still, like you said, jumping from 3.1 to 4.0 is a kind of a big leap. It's all marketing at the end of the day, you know, and I get it. It's good on Nikon for actually doing it. It makes a big splash, especially for the Nikon fanboys out there saying, hey, we're on 4.0 now.
Well, they need to get excited about something.
Well, what I'm surprised about also is, it didn't get any of the new features from the Z8. Like, I mean, there were kind of BS features like the skin softening and the auto tune for the white balance and stuff like that. But I'm surprised they didn't throw them in there on top of these new features. I mean, it is nice that the flagship is a little different now than the Z8. It's got a little more better advanced features, but especially the auto capture. I really like that.
So I love that one of the updates says enhancements to 3D tracking for smaller subjects. And I was like, oh, that's funny. The 3D tracking wasn't good.
I thought
the
it's
3D
perfect,
tracking.
Jared.
Yeah, the 3D tracking needed to be updated a little bit because the 3D. So every time we go and do a video and people are like, "Oh, you were in 3D tracking. That is the wrong mode to be in." And I constantly bring this up, and I know people get upset about it. But if you turn on any Sony or any Canon, even down to the R100, the cheapest of the cheap, and you turn it on and you go to focus, it finds a face and it finds an eye. You don't have to change a setting. You don't have to go to a different mode to activate it. You don't have to decide between 5 different modes and settings to determine which one is right for that particular situation. That's what I need Nikon to fix. It should be all encompassing. 3D should just be a part of it. It should be whatever the best focus mode is. It just works. And that's what I get at.
What's funny too is when we first got our hands on the Z9 a few months before the launch, Nikon themselves specifically said we should be in 3D tracking mode for the autofocus. And, then people were like, why are you in that mode? You shouldn't be in that mode, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, well, that's what they recommended, guys.
Right. And so that's another thing that always happens is we have direct contact with the engineers with Japan, and we ask the questions we need to ask, and they give us their answers, and that's what we base everything on because they're the ones who built the damn camera. And so then when you read the comments of people being like, you have no clue what you're doing, it's like, okay, thank you. And that's it. But one of the newest features that I find to be pretty unique is the what do they call? What's that one called?
Auto capture.
Auto capture.
Yeah, that's
auto
pretty cool.
capture. Do you have that up on the screen to read?
Yeah, I have Nikon's official press release. I can say what how they explain it. Auto capture grants users the ability to set the camera to automatically record still images or video by pre-configuring auto capture criteria. The 3 criteria that can be configured include a motion option that detects subjects that make certain movements, a distance option which begins shooting when a subject is within a certain range of distances, and a subject detection option which detects a person, animal, or vehicle within the frame. And basically the camera will go off, either record video or take photos when one of these 3 modes is triggered.
So that's basically like a camera trap.
Exactly.
That you would set
but now
up in the...
built in the camera, which is pretty cool.
It's built into the camera, though I don't know that it's going to be as useful in certain situations. So imagine in sports, if you have it saved on, say, the goalie, right? The problem is you want it for when action is around the net. But the goalie's going to be standing there the whole game, so it would just be literally taking pictures every time the goalie entered that situation versus a person holding a remote to remotely trigger it for sports. Now, it does make sense in the sense where you just have it focused on a certain area and say there's a rock climber going up a wall and you set a camera somewhere else and it's going to stay on and trigger when something comes into that situation. That's pretty cool.
Well, and I think wildlife makes sense. For example, in their promo video, they have a wildlife photographer trying to capture an eagle and its nest. And when the eagle would leave the nest or fly into the nest, the camera would be triggered. So I think that's pretty interesting.
I think photos, by the way.
I think it makes the most sense for wildlife shooters. It really is a pretty awesome feature to be built in now.
Or you have, say, someone coming around the corner of a bend, right, like a motorcycle, and you set it there so you get the motorcyclist coming around the corner, say on a racetrack, and they're all when they come around.
That's a good point. Yeah,
it enters the frame, and you can say what direction you want it to go. You can say, do you want it to set it for distance? How long to shoot? You could have it shoot for 3 seconds every time a subject crosses. It can shoot for 3 seconds. And then it can wait for 1 second in between before it shoots again, or it could just, if it's triggered, it's going to keep shooting. So you can end up with a lot of images to go through, but that's what a remote does, is you set it up and you then go through after to see what you get and if it worked.
I think the biggest thing that I saw, at least on some of the Nikon groups and like Nikon Rumors comments, the pre-release buffer has been expanded, but the issue is it's still JPEG only. So a lot of people were concerned, like, why can't we get pre-release buffer? Why can't we get RAW for pre-release buffer? It doesn't really make sense. I also still don't understand why the Z8 or Z9 can't shoot 30 frames per second RAW, because when you think about it, it does 8K 60p RAW video. So it's doing pretty much RAW capture for 60 frames per second. Why can't it do 30 frames per second? Now, granted, it's 12-bit versus a 14-bit file, but still, I just don't understand why they can't push it to 30 frames per second RAW. Even give me 12-bit. I don't care.
Well, remember that every file from the Nikon Z8 and Z9 is a compressed RAW file straight up. You can't have the option to have it be just RAW, uncompressed.
It's
you
still
don't have
14-bit
that option.
though, is what I'm saying.
Everything's still compressed, straight out.
So why can't we get?
There's a limitation there. I don't know what the limitation is that Canon can do it and Sony can do it. Now, it's not so much that Canon can do it because the R3 is a 24 megapixel sensor. It's more so that the A1 can do it at a 50 megapixel sensor at 30 frames per second. Still RAW, and it may be compressed, but it's still RAW.
And again, what I'm saying is if it can do 8K 60p RAW 12-bit video internally, why can't it do 30 frames per second? Again, full frame, same thing, pretty much an 8K. What's 8K, like 36 megapixels or something like that?
I don't know these specifications even.
Or 33, but it should be able to still pretty much shoot 30 frames per second RAW. I think Nikon can do it. I'm just not sure why they aren't releasing that as an option.
Yeah.
But anyway, the firmware update overall is pretty cool. I'm a little confused by the new low sensitivity for N-Log. They're pushing it down to 200. I don't know if now it's just I can go to 200 and shoot N-Log, or if that's the new base ISO, because usually the base ISO is 800 for N-Log.
It still said -2. So
it's
think
still
of it,
low.
-2 is 400 is low 1, and then 200 is low 2.
But typically, you don't want to shoot below the base ISO for log footage.
They say that low, Nikon, when I asked them in the past, low just meant that it can do it, but the engineers don't want to sign off on it as being super clean or being ready for prime time. It can do it, but there might be some imperfections.
It's more like if I need an exposure correction, I can go to low instead of 800 ISO and have a blown out image or something.
I guess, but they don't, again, recommend it. Even though it's weird that they're pushing it now.
Yeah, well, again, it just looks like they unlocked it for N-Log specifically. 400 must have been the other low one that you could go to. I always shoot 800, the base ISO for log. They now have the baked-in slow motion in camera, which Canon always had, and I actually hate that. I love that Nikon gives you 24p 5x slow motion, but it's not slowed down, so I have the total freedom and flexibility in post to do whatever I want with it, where Canon screws you and gives you baked in 30 frames per second slow motion footage, and it's super annoying. But now you have the best of both worlds with Nikon, so kudos to them.
Still don't think it should be called 4.0. And the best got better. I love the marketing. The best got better. I see it in the comments. People are like, the best just got better.
I mean, it's working.
Okay, well,
it's working.
Do you need 4 firmwares to finally get to the best? I mean, I know they're saying that, well, it was already the best and it got even better now, but usually if it was already the best, it doesn't really need that much in the way of firmware updates because it was already there. Mm-hmm. Like the firmware updates for the R5, what number are we on in the R5? Like 2 point something?
No, it's like 1.71 or 1.81. It's one of those two.
Really?
I can't recall. Yeah,
because there were major updates to the R5.
The biggest was 1.5 or 6, where they fixed the overheating issue, where you can literally record for 2 straight hours in
Completely.
4K HQ. I mean, even in 8K, I've recorded for almost an hour with no issues. Now the camera feels like it's going to be on fire, but they unlocked whatever that software limitation was to let you actually record for a long amount of time without overheating. Because I know that's still, I always see comments like, well, the R5 overheats. It's like, no, it doesn't anymore with this firmware update.
People just hang on to the past for that one.
Again, it's still annoying that they give you that 30-minute record limit. That should be a simple fix via firmware. So I don't know why they haven't fixed that yet.
Especially when the other Canon cameras already can do that.
Yep.
So I'm going to be popping out to LA next week, Monday to Wednesday at this point for now. And I just figured, Steve, it's unfortunate that it doesn't line up perfectly with Steven going away.
Yeah.
Because Steven's going away, but maybe I'll
go
go away
the following week.
Right, but maybe I'll go away the next week. I just basically didn't want to sit around, Steven. There's an event going on out there that I want to go to, so that's why I'm going out. It's an event on Tuesday evening, and that's why I'm going out. I didn't want to just sit here.
The good thing is we've got pretty much everything planned out in terms of shoots, and I have enough to give our other editors stuff to work on for now while I'm gone. That's always the biggest thing for me, is to make sure everyone has enough to work on while I'm absent.
Are you taking a maternity leave, Steven?
For the 10,000th time, yes.
How long are you going to be away for?
2 weeks. We talked about this many times.
You're taking 2 weeks?
Yes.
Holy Jesus.
Yep, this is not the first time you've heard this.
What if you get? What are we going to do about the podcast? You still going to do the podcast?
We'll see. Depends how
busy
busy I am.
Did we talk about that too?
All I know is I'm taking 2 weeks. That's all that matters to me.
You're going to get bored. You're going to get bored.
I want to spend all the time in the world with my newborn, so.
Yeah, you could do that. You're just going to get bored. You're going to be like, enough of this. I need to get back to doing something.
No, I will not be bored. I'll tell you that.
You don't think so?
No.
You don't think so?
Mm-mm.
I do. I'd get bored
because you want me
to
come back. That's why.
No. You take the time that you need. That's fine. I've just wondered because, the last person that had maternity leave here, what they take, a week?
Week and a half.
2 weeks?
10
week
days.
And a half? It was whatever, right? I didn't put a number on it. I just whatever you need, right? And then come back when you're, tired of dealing with a kid, which was really soon. I don't know. We'll see. I'll maybe get there one day and be like, you know what, Steven? You were right about this. It won't happen because I'll probably have a nanny or something.
My old boss was kind of like that. Like he never had children, was a workaholic. Work was his life, basically. And then he finally had a child and he really slowed down because he used to text and call off hours, all of that. And then once he had a child, he really would work his normal 9 to 5 and then he was out. He was with his kid the rest of the day and focused on them. So it was really interesting to see that change in him because he went from not a family man at all and not understanding family life to becoming the total family man.
Yeah.
There's hope. There's hope for you.
Steven. I still need to put it in something and not a hooker.
Not pay for it or tip.
And not
just a tip.
They're not funny, Steven. Anyway, if you see me in LA, come up and say hello. You can ask for a photo. I do not get upset about that. You're more than welcome to come say hi to me. If you see me walking, be like, hey, Jared, hi, nice to see you. And then go away. I'm just kidding. But I'm looking forward to being out there in LA. I haven't been there since the beginning of the pandemic. Going to crash at my friend's house. I had a air mattress delivered with sheets because he's got a pretty full house up there in the Hollywood Hills. But I'm like, I'll just order an air mattress and then you can have it for other guests that come in the future. And he's like, yeah, come on over. You can hang out, you can sleep. And that's the plan.
Cool.
That's the plan. I haven't been there in a while, but we'll make it work. I'll do some work while I'm out there. If I do stay a little longer, I'll have my, we do have the photo news fix thing. Yeah. I have the Parrot, right? The Parrot teleprompter thing that they're promoting on.
Pro Padcaster teleprompter. They're version 2, basically, of their original
First things
Parrot.
first, this is one of the cheapest feeling products in the history of products.
If you bend it a little hard, it's probably going to snap in half, yes.
But from
it's
a functionality,
though.
but from what's a Kickstarter? $99,
something like that, yeah.
Right. For what it offers, for the ease of use, for us testing it out yesterday and me being able to use a Max iPhone this time, and I could see it from 5 feet comfortably and have a remote and use it to me, and it folds up regardless of it being inexpensive, because it's inexpensive and it does feel inexpensive. I'm not going to lie about that. And this is not sponsored at all. So we're just telling you they did send it to us for us to play with, regardless of it being inexpensive and cheap feeling. It does work. It did work for us.
It does the job, yes.
It made me happy to know that I can take this to Paris. I can take this anywhere I want to go, set up a camera, because it doesn't matter what the background looks like. It's about the news.
Yep.
And so I'll just be like, I'm here in this place, and maybe I have that in the background, or I do it outside, and if the lighting isn't perfect, it doesn't matter.
I was just going to say, I don't even care if the image looks like shit. As long as you can present the news and the audio quality's fine, that's all I care about, because we're putting B-roll all over top of that video, so it doesn't really matter what you look like.
Exactly. So that's the thing. And plus, I think it's cool that I could write it and do it on my own from anywhere in the world and make it work. That's the fun part.
And the way this Parrot prompter works, it's really interesting because they just basically give you an adapter to screw on your filter thread on the lens, and then that slides the entire unit over the lens. And they give you just about every adapter possible, from a 33 millimeter filter thread all the way up to 82. So, unless you have a 95 millimeter, 28 to 70, which, you could use it, I guess, but you'd have to get your own adapter at that point.
Does it double as a cock ring? And what size do you use? 33 millimeters?
Depends.
Shut up. That's a funny one. You didn't think about it?
No, I did not think about it. Now, it's metal too, so just FYI, that's the interesting part, is that the adapters are actually really solid, metal pieces, but the actual full prompter unit itself feels like cheap plastic that you can snap in half. You think
just
it would
don't
be the
snap it in
opposite.
half.
Yeah.
It works, though. I will tell you, it made
does.
me happy because it folds up into something pretty small. The remote control works really. It's $20 for the Bluetooth remote. Highly necessary to control.
And it's the
script.
high-end glass that the camera can easily see through.
Beam
You're not
splitter?
Yeah, you're not
I don't
losing
know.
a ton of light. So that's the most important part, is the quality of the actual glass that you're shooting through.
So anyway, their updates that they made are pretty good, and I'm glad that we tested it out so that I can use it for personal use for $100 or whatever they charge for it.
Personal use, Jared? The adapters? Personal use?
Yes, the adapters, Stephen, with the hookers. We'll see what size hooker uses what size 80 millimeter, 82 millimeter filter thread. No, it's just a good tool for me to be able to throw in the bag and have the confidence that I can do this from anywhere in the world.
And on top of that, it's so light that you all you have to do is put the camera on a tripod. You don't need like an additional light stand to hold the weight and support the weight of the actual prompter, because again, you're just putting a phone on it and that's about it. And the prompter itself weighs like, 1/10 of a pound maybe.
Well, and we decided on a 15 to 35 2.8 RF lens on a Canon R8. So it's a super light, small setup. And we put it out to 35 millimeters at 2.8 because, again, the background doesn't really matter that much. But that is a lens that I would take with me anyway, probably. And the R8 is just a small camera, and it does 4K. It does the job. I don't need anything bigger. Even if I do take an R3, I wouldn't use the R3 for this.
And the main issue with the original prompter that we had was you couldn't have a super wide lens on it, because it would have vignetting basically. You could actually see the inside of the prompter with the original prompter that they had. Now the new one, you could shoot all the way at pretty much 15 millimeters and you're not seeing any of the actual prompter. So before, you had to be a little farther back, because I'd have to throw like a 35 millimeter or 50 on there to make it work without seeing the vignetting and edges. But now you could be pretty close. So I gave you a 15 to 35 because I have no idea, how big your hotel room's going to be, where you're going to be, whatever. It's nice to have that flexibility.
The old design was more like 4:3, almost a square aspect ratio. So you lost out on your screen resolution, like being able to see the wide part, which was very difficult. But
It's more like 16 by 9 now.
Yeah, they changed it. It's much like I could read the whole thing and have room to spare with my big
And
iPhone.
we have the font on 100, the biggest. So only like 3 words are on the screen left to right.
I think that's the best for me,
For
because
you,
then
yeah.
when we lowered it to like 80 something, it looked like I was reading across the line. And here, with just 3 words and me controlling the teleprompter with the remote, it flowed, it worked, and it's going to work.
Yeah,
I
but
think.
either way, you're still reading the same distance from left to right, whether it's bigger or smaller.
Right. No, but actually, I think when I have to focus on smaller words, it looks more like I'm reading versus
Like
me
squinting
being able to
and-
see it in my peripheral.
Okay, gotcha.
Because I don't have to focus as hard. There was one more thing I wanted to say about popping out to LA, because I will be flying. Some of you who follow my Instagram may have noticed that there was a woman who started a petition saying that airlines, she was a larger woman, that airlines need to not make her pay extra for another seat if she is too large to take up, to fit into one seat. So a lot of people have signed this petition. CNN now has done a story on this policy. Basically, they did, and I quote, "We're paying twice for the same experience. Plus-size travelers hit out at discriminatory airline seat policies." Now, I don't want to go too deep into this, but I do understand that some people, it's not in their control that they're overweight. There's issues that go on, but the counter is there's tall people who, if they want to pay for extra legroom, have to pay for extra legroom. If they get a regular seat, they don't get a free upgrade to a bigger seat.
Sure.
Right? I don't get to pay less money for first class because I don't fill a whole first class seat. Right? So there's all that.
I had a bigger friend that would have to always fly first class because he couldn't comfortably fit in a normal economy seat, but he would pay for the upgrade, or he would fly private if it really came down to it, which is unfortunate that he has to pay that, but he understands he's a bigger person and he has to pay to fly.
Right. And I just think about Too Fat to Fly with Kevin Smith back in the day, where Southwest...
Is that a thing?
Yes. You don't remember Southwest Airlines Too Fat to Fly?
No.
Southwest Kevin Smith too fat to fly. I remember he said he would never fly on there again. Now, Kevin Smith was absolutely too fat. He was overweight and extremely obese and almost died. For those who don't know, he had like an almost widowmaker blockage in his heart.
Oh.
And luckily he was about to do a comedy show, and his assistant was like, "You don't look good." He's like, "No, I'll be fine. She's like, "No." They called the ambulance. They so happened to be at the best trauma center for the heart issues, and they're like, "You are lucky to be here. You need to change your lifestyle." And guess what Kevin Smith did? He changed his lifestyle. He lost he looks super thin.
He is
and
thin,
he walks and he made a change because he should have been dead, right? So there's that. And he was too fat to fly on Southwest. So this was in 2010. Kevin Smith's most famous role is a guy who rarely speaks, but he's got a lot to say. Much of it profane, after being kicked off a Southwest air flight because he didn't fit comfortably into the seat. So, yeah, he originally purchased 2 tickets, as he's been known to do when traveling Southwest, the airline noted. But when he decided to fly standby on an earlier flight, only 1 seat remained.
Oh, yeah.
Although he had been seated, he was asked to leave. If a customer cannot comfortably lower the armrest and infringes on a portion of another seat, a customer seated adjacent would be very uncomfortable, and a timely exit from the aircraft in the event of an emergency might be compromised. If we allow Steven, that brings up something that will get me yelled at, but these exits in the middle of the airplanes on the windows are not very large.
No?
This woman, who is very large, I'm trying to put a weight on her, I would say 300 plus pounds.
I would say bigger than that.
She would not fit through the door safely. So it is also a safety issue. With that being said, what contingencies are there for people who are in wheelchairs, who can't sit in a wheelchair? They have to be put in a seat like Jaleel. In case of an emergency, how the fuck does he get out of the airplane? I have to put him on my back or something?
I don't know.
Like,
That's a good question. Yeah.
That's like, do they somehow pull out a mini wheelchair for wheeling out in the aisle for him? That's an interesting point. But yeah, Kevin Smith was too fat to fly, had a major issue with Southwest, and it looked like it's not really Southwest's fault in that situation. He did buy 2 tickets for one flight. In another flight, he couldn't lower the seat rest because he was too fat. Thankfully, he lost a lot of weight. The moral of the story is, look, if you are overweight, it's not always a choice. We say that. In a lot of cases, it is, but it's not discriminatory. It's safety. I do want to point out that airlines have shrunk the size of seats, but they haven't shrunk it in such a size that it would fit this person.
Yeah, at the end of the day, the airline seats are too small to begin with.
Well, yeah, they made them smaller to squeeze more people in, but even with saying that they've shrunk them, which they should, not have always done,
yeah,
this person or a plus-size person might still have an issue. It is a safety thing. I do think they should have to buy extra tickets if they want to comfortably sit on a flight. They would need extra flight. There's a picture of her in the row. Steven, she unfortunate. Oh, she has an oxygen tank too that she's wearing. And this is tough. Her chest is touching the seat in front of her. Mm-hmm. And she's sitting all the way in the back. That's unfortunate. But the moral of the story is I don't think that the airlines are discriminating against plus-size people. And I think people are afraid to say what I'm saying here, that, and not just be like, yeah, you're being discriminated upon against. No, because tall people can't... I've seen people give up their seats to tall people. If it was a short flight, right? Probably a short flight, and I'm in an exit row, because a lot of times I'm eligible for exit row. Sometimes there's like 5 or 6 feet in front of you in the exit row. If there's someone who's sitting in front of me that's like 6'8" or 7 foot, there's a good possibility I might be like, dude, you take this seat. I'm not going to do it. Or sometimes the airlines will just, if they have an extra seat up front, they might be like, you know what, we're going to move you up front just because. Mm-hmm. And maybe they would do the same for a plus-size person. That's all I have to say about that. And that's because I'm flying out and hopefully get upgraded to first class where I don't fill up the whole seat. So Sony news, Steven. Sony news. Sony rumor news.
Yeah, they're saying the A6700 is coming, which looks like it's going to be their next flagship APS-C camera. It's going to be obviously above the A6600, which hasn't, I think it's been 4 years since 2019 when that came out.
I don't know, Steven. We were banned from that Sony trip.
And we actually never really reviewed an APS-C Sony camera because they never invited us on those trips. I mean, that was before...
Banned. We were banned from the last one in San Diego.
And wasn't that two cameras? Wasn't the 6400 and the 6600 or something like that?
I think it was just one. I don't know. I don't know why they didn't do that for us.
Well, they're saying that this is going to have the same sensor as the FX30, which is a pretty fast reading sensor. It's 26 megapixels, a nice sweet spot.
Is that a stack sensor?
It's not a stack sensor. I don't think so. But again, this is going to be their flagship APS-C camera, so I assume this is going to go directly against the R7. What's Nikon? Nikon has just the Z50, right? APS-C wise?
Z50. They have a Z30.
Well, I would think the Z50 is a little better.
That doesn't have a viewfinder, right?
The Z30 was more the video-centric one, right? APS-C wise?
Well, they tried to do that, but it still has terrible autofocus.
Right now, Nikon doesn't really have much to compete in the APS-C world, but I'm sure they're working on that if I had to guess. I'm actually surprised that Sony's still trying to compete with APS-C. I just thought they were over APS-C and they're going full frame, especially after something like the A7C came out.
Well, they have those vlogging cameras. Those are...
Well, that's what I mean. It looked like they kind of took over. They moved that towards the ZV lineup. But again, that's video-centric products too.
I just hope they change the body. I hope that they go to a real camera feel.
They're saying it's going to be the A7C body, which I hate that body.
I hate that body, but I love the Z50 body from Nikon. Now that body feels awesome.
Feels
in
like
the
a little
hands.
camera, yeah.
And you have a viewfinder right in the middle, which is where I think it should go, versus off to the left-hand side, which is more difficult for a left-eye shooter like me, because now my whole face is mushing against the back of the screen, and it's usually a pretty teeny tiny viewfinder.
And they're saying that this is going to have the AI processor, same as the ZV-E1, so it looks like everything moving forward is going to have this new AI processing unit. Great autofocus, we already know that. 7 stops of IBIS, 6K, 30p 10-bit video, which I find really interesting. 4K 120 with a crop, or it looks like they're saying the 4K 120 will come with a future firmware update or something. 3.69 million dot viewfinder, that's always nice to have. Again, will it be in the middle? Will it be off to the side? Will it be big enough to actually look through? 2 SD and 2 CF Express Type A cards, yeah, like the reverse compatible.
No way in hell it's going to have dual card slots.
Well, again, if this is their flagship, I mean, think about the R7, that has dual cards.
Yeah, but this body's usually too small.
And then they're saying maybe $2,000 for something like this. I don't know. I mean, I'd rather buy like an A7 IV than a flagship APS-C camera personally, but we'll see.
I agree. Bigger is still better. I don't like the feel of those bodies. We'll see if that changes at all. They're saying that it will be, July 12th that it's coming?
July 12th is what they're rumoring, yeah. And all these specs are rumored, so they could be completely off.
Yeah, you never know. But they also, which I think is more important, have rumored that there's 3 full-frame E-mount cameras coming in the next 4 to 5 months after that July 12th announcement.
I mean, it's been a while that Sony really hasn't put out a lot of E-mount cameras minus the ZV lineup, you know?
It's been a while.
Stained. Aaron Lewis.
It's been a while.
Which, by the way, they're back.
No, whatever.
Not that you care.
I don't really care about Stained very much, you know. Yeah, it has been a while. Been a while since they put out anything full frame in terms of good.
I mean, the A7R5 was the last one. That wasn't that long ago, but
no, the A7R5 is the first of the lineup to get the AI processor. That one's fine.
They always do that. They start with the R series, and then everything gets released after that.
Now, this is where I got some shit in the comments for Photo News Fix. I said that the A7 IV was a swing and the miss for me. I said, for me.
Whoa.
And the reason I talk about it being a swing and the miss, 1, it was 33 megapixels, which I thought was fantastic.
Nice sweet spot, yeah.
2, it's a nice feeling body, right? It has the lock-on tracking, but when I use this camera, in comparison to other cameras on the market, it was a really slow readout speed. The background literally warped when you were trying to shoot silent. And then there's people like, oh, but you don't always have to shoot silent. I'm like, that's not the point. The point is every other system, like the R6 at the time, did 12 frames a second with a mechanical shutter, which is basically double the frames per second that you got with the A7 IV. And when you go to silent, the A7 IV gave you like 3 or 4 shots of wobbly footage, and something like the R6 gave you 20.
Well, that's the thing, is these Sony cameras have never been meant for electronic shooting. Like, Canon is now pushing electronic more than mechanical these days, and Sony's quite the opposite unless it's a stack sensor camera like the A9 or A1. Their electronic readout has always been absolutely terrible. Even if you take the A7R5, for example, when you're shooting video, like 8K full-frame video, if you do any kind of, movement in the frame, there's some crazy jelloing going on. So with a static shot, it looks great, but it's hard to shoot in that 8K mode without having, if there's any movement.
I do think Sony's getting better, because if you look at the ZV-E1 or whatever those cameras are, we found that readout speed has gotten better, at least for video. So there's less jelloing. So that's a good thing.
For me, the A7 IV just didn't make as big of a splash as something like the A7 III did when it came out in that $2,000 price point. We've talked about this before. I just think they have a lot more competition now, with the R6 Mark II, all cameras that are priced similarly but offer way more.
Right, and so the full frame options, you might be looking at, I think it's going to be an A7 V, which adds the new AI processor. I don't know that they'll change very much. Hopefully they do change the sensor and do a faster readout speed and a faster shooting. I really don't think there should be an A9 III. Maybe I saw people being like, oh, what about the A7C2? I don't know that you'll see an A7C2 right now.
Depends on the price.
Do like that small form factor.
See, you think you're getting an A7 V already? It's only been
2 years. It's been over 2.5 years.
It was October of 2021 when it came out. So it's not even been 2 years. It's been a year and a half.
It's possible, Stephen, that it won't, and that the A7C that people are saying, an A7C2 that takes the innards from an A7 IV might be a good option. I heard that the A7 IV was one of the top selling Sony cameras ever.
I believe it.
So
it's a great price point.
When I say a swing and a miss for me, I'm talking about for the features that I want. It's still a great camera in terms of quality, right? It just seemed like not a great step up from what the A7 III offered at the time.
Agreed.
If there is an A9 III, Sony Alpha Rumors is saying that it's going to be the fastest readout speed ever. It's going to be the fastest shooting camera ever in terms of frames per second for stills. It's going to get the AI processor, which I think is obviously a big deal across the board. And we'll see if that happens. What are they going to do? A 24 megapixel, a 30 megapixel?
Now it would be in direct competition with the Z8. It'll be it's $4,000? What if now that's the new stack sensor lineup, is that $4,000 price, like mid-range between a flagship and something like an R6 Mark II,
I always thought maybe they'll take the sensor from the A1 and put a 50 megapixel into this, and then come up with some new sensor for the A1 II.
Yeah.
Like, what will the A1 II bring? Like, these are the things. So to see that 3 cameras are coming, one, they're going to all come when Steven is on fucking maternity leave. That's going to be a thing.
Every time I leave, something comes out. Every single time.
Well, the thing is, August, September, October are the busiest months for tech.
Yep.
And the busiest months for all these new cameras coming. It's just going to be that way.
It's usually late September, though, so I'm hoping late August it's not going to be an issue, but we'll see.
Steven, do you remember the 26th day of September?
Because what was it, the end of the pandemic or the first year of the pandemic, where there were so many new cameras in September, October. That was like the R5, R6 release, everything else. Actually, that was July.
busy.
Yeah, it was crazy.
We got super busy. Well, we'll have to figure out what's going to go on. If Steven isn't here, maybe he'll, moonlight or something and figure it out, because he's like a manager and stuff.
We'll figure it out.
We'll figure it out, Steven. Any other news that we need to talk about, or was that all of the news we wanted to talk about this week?
I think that was all the big discussions we wanted to talk about, yeah.
Yeah, that Nikon people don't like us. No one likes us. No one likes us. No one likes us. We don't care. We're from Philly, fucking Philly. No one likes us. We don't care.
But just rewatch the comparison. I think we were pretty fair throughout the entire video. I really do. And the Z8's a great camera. We've said it. We said it in the video. They go to war without even watching the video. Just the second you put out something with Z9 or Z8, the Nikon fanboys just flock to the comment section and immediately start being negative.
That's going to make me go harder into it, Steven.
Well, that's what I mean.
That just makes me go harder. That makes me go even harder on
the fire.
Because why, Steven? They don't like us. They don't like us. We don't care. Because we're from Philly, fucking Philly. Go fuck yourself, you fucking commenters.
What a way to end the show.
You got me riled up, Steven. Riled up.
The funny thing is, you don't even care at all, usually.
Well, I just don't want to read them before bed.
Yeah.
Like,
I do the same. I never check anything before bed because I don't want to think about it.
Usually if I read...
Yeah.
In this day and age, if I get like a negative comment and I'm looking, I just stop reading comments altogether.
Yeah.
Like, we post a video, fuck it. It's up. I don't care.
It's out
It's
in the world.
gone.
Yep.
It's done. It's in the world. I'm not going to comment back to the assholes who are the negative commenters. And that unfortunately affects the good commenters because I do like replying to them. But whatever. Anyway, 313-710-9729. You can text us on that line. That's where we're going to do those Q&As for the upcoming episode when Steven is going to be on vacation. And we will get that done for next week. And I may make an episode from LA, or I may wait till I get home. I guess it all depends on how I feel and what is going on and how that event is that I'm going to on Tuesday.
And hopefully your internet's fine. I'm sure it's good enough for audio and a Zoom call.
Oh, there's plenty of internet where I'm going to be going.
Okay, cool.
We got the best of the best. Anyway, there's plenty of internet in LA, I'm assuming, especially where I'm staying at a friend's house. But, you know, I'm trying to do some shoots while I'm out there. That's like the plan. I'm trying to meet up with my friend from Jet, the drummer of Jet. Going to try and meet up with him. I got some other friends. I got a friend who does video for Dixie and Charlie D'Amelio. I met him on the road. He's a cool kid. I really like him. So I may try to meet up with him. He's like, oh, you want to borrow the Leica? You want to try the Leica?
Ooh.
I'm like, yeah.
Which one are we talking about?
Well, I believe Leica is sending him some Q3s to play with.
There you go.
So there is that.
I've heard that's what's hot on the streets these days.
Yeah, for $6,000.
For these 7 people that own that camera.
Yeah, everybody's buying this. Everybody's buying this. No. Everybody's just copying you right now, and there's no reason. I would like to try a Q3. I'm trying to get a reach out to Leica to try it. I would love a reach around from them so that I can do it. They give it to every schmuck with a fucking channel the size of a peanut. And
the only time we ever used the Leica, right, was that one challenge video that we did. Did you have to rent that yourself, or did they send that to you?
No, it was a different agency they had at the time, and they sent it to me. But what I love, my favorite excuse from these people when you reach out to them is, oh, we only have a limited amount of supply. I'm like, yeah, that works when you're talking to someone with 1,000 subscribers. That doesn't work with someone with 1.4 million subscribers. That doesn't work in my situation. That works in a situation where someone doesn't like rank getting it. Just tell me you don't want to give it to me. But don't come up with some bullshit like you have limited supply because you just gave one to Dick Blick over here who has 12 followers and gets 423 views.
Yeah, do you know who I am?
I'm not Dick Blick. By the way, there is a store named Dick Blick in Philly. It's an art supply store. Oh. It's called Dick Blick.
That's weird.
It's a very nice store when I bought painting supplies. All right, Steven, let's wrap this up. I got to get over to the other building to do some stuff.
Let's wrap it up.
This episode 55 of RAWtalk, where we talk about whatever we want to talk about, however we want to talk about it. We release episodes every Friday. We thank you guys very much for listening. Jared, PolinFronosPhoto.com. See ya.